We kind of previewed it yesterday. Susan Shelley brought you her column of the big story of LADWP official David Wright, who is in a whole heap of trouble going on. You've heard it. We've brought this case to you before. We touched on it a little bit on the show. We have a guy on that could probably tell you a little bit, maybe a lot, not only what's going on in the city of Riverside, city of LA, but throughout our whole political, criminal system. Jason Hunter, welcome to IE Newswire with Roy.
Hey, Roy. Hey, how you doing? Great to be back.
Absolutely fantastic. We did a little bit about the story yesterday. Susan Shelley was focusing mainly on what went on down in LA because that's where she's from. And when she said that and said what it was about, I said, is that the deal with David Wright? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, I know why Jason Hunter's blowing up my phone saying, hey, what's going on that? Back it up to when it started, and let's stay with Riverside Public Utilities, David Wright and Jason Hunter. Give us a little crib notes of how that all transpired.
Well, let's go back to that in a second, but let's start with the story in the LA Times that just came out last week. I think it was last Monday, where it seems actually last week that Dave Wright and one of his co-conspirators, they're now, the FBI, of course, raided LADWP, all connected to this giant billing scandal and overcharging that happened back many years ago, actually, several years ago now, but they raided LADWP in 2009. Dave Wright resigned and didn't hear much about it since then, but now we're seeing that the plea agreements are starting to come out with the Department of Justice, with David Wright, former RPU general manager here in Riverside, and also former LADWP general manager. He has now filed a plea to I think he's up to 10 years in jail in exchange for admitting his role in a number of schemes. With the one that he's pleading to is a bribe that he accepted for steering a contract to an attorney co-conspirator of his, a $30 million no-bid contract out of LADWP, in exchange for future employment with this lawyer running a cybersecurity firm that he did the contract with. Dave Wright did the contract with. So he grants the bid for a $30 million contract. There were also other details in there, like doing deals with another company with this co-conspirator lawyer, outside counsel for LADWP, where they were going to do another $15 million contract for training. They were going to do future cybersecurity contracts before Dave had left his office, if he hadn't been raided by the FBI. And in return, Dave was going to get $1 million a year job with this company. The name of the company was Aventador, eventually became Ardent Cybersecurity. And I think he was going to get a brand new, $100,000 car as his company car, perhaps a $600,000 to a $1.2 million sign-on bonus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He was going to be lavished upon with all these riches in return for granting these non-competitive contracts with public money out of LADWP. And so that seems to be kind of blowing up now. The FBI is going through, kind of like any sort of investigation they do when they're looking into more or less an organized crime ring. They're rolling them one at a time. It's a slow roll. And so they're slowly releasing just enough of the details, but not too much, because I'm sure there will be no more either pleas or arrests coming in this case, because my guess is it doesn't stop at the two co-conspirators, Dave Wright and his attorney buddy friend, this guy, Paul Paradise. My guess is it goes much further down. And as I said, the FBI accounts don't, and the Department of Justice accounts don't name the co-conspirators, the other co-conspirators, quite yet. They call them by different, like, general sort of generic names. So I guess we'll find out more in the weeks and months, and maybe, who knows, maybe years to come. So that's where we are now. Of course, Dave Wright was a as I mentioned before, was a former general manager. He left Riverside Public Utilities, I want to say around 2000, maybe 13, 14, somewhere in that time period.
13.
I worked for him personally. I was actually fired by him personally without cause back in 2013 for, in my opinion, for more or less just writing about all the scams and schemes and swindles and crookery that was taking place at Riverside Public Utilities back then. And in return, Dave decided, he couldn't allow me to poison the well by sending memos to the city manager and the city council and God knows who else. He actually said, you know what, you just came in one day and said, just collect all your things. I know you're a civil servant, you have protections and you have due process rights, but I'm just firing you. And the city attorney's office and the HR all went along with it, even though they knew they were going to get their asses sued, and they did. And I prevailed on that case in 2015, but they didn't care because it wasn't their money; it was the public's money, and they just needed to get rid of me and get me out of there at the time. And then, of course, he went on to bigger, better things over at Ladwp, and the Tigers don't change their stripes, Roy.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. Yeah, the part of it, but it is the public's money that became their money. And you see by this, and you heard it, the $1 million this and cars this and that. It's their salaries, ridiculous. I mean, 200, 300, who knows how much these guys are really getting paid or what the total benefits that they're getting off of these jobs of that. But on top of that, not only are they pilfering you by the tens, hundreds, even billions of dollars, they're personally enriching themselves and living a life of luxury off of your back. And this is what one of the things that I've said and frustrates me in the beginning. If the allegations and stuff and the documentation you made, Dave Wright should have been investigated, probably charged and prosecuted for what he was doing at Riverside Public Utilities, then we would not be seeing this story, which is about 152 probably times bigger, because how much bigger is Ladwp? And that, well, we got more toys to play with to rip the public off with of that. But if you didn't stop it in the crib when it began, then it just gets bigger, Jason Hunter.
Well, and so that leads me back to, and we've talked about this on your show before, is that Riverside has been trying to get an audit done of an organization called SCAPA, Southern California Public Power Authority, of which it's a member of. It's a joint powers agency, where there's a bunch of smaller publicly owned utilities like Riverside and Pasadena, Burbank. Ladwp is also a member of that, where they aggregate their power, buying power, so they can do transmission and generation projects run out of Glendora. And I've been trying to get an audit of that organization since 2012. I've been working on it for 9 years.
So when you were working at Riverside Public Utilities?
When I was working at Public Utilities, and then after I left in 2013, the last 8 years, I've been trying as a member of the public to get an audit of the organization. There's been 3 audits. The first 2, after they were done and they were clean audits, come to find out, Dave Wright's 20-year boyfriend was the internal auditor who conducted the audits over at the city.
Repeat that again.
Yes, after the audits came back and they said they were clean audits, about 6-7 months later, I was found out. No one told me. I just found out, just a fluke, quite frankly. I was searching through random public records requests over at the city of Riverside because I don't have much of a social life. And I came across an email from some alias sent an email to the city, and it said that, maybe Dave Wright's boyfriend, Vincent Price, shouldn't be doing audits of RPU during his time there because that might be a conflict. And I thought to myself, wait a second, you're saying those 2 clean audits that just came back on SCAPA were done by Dave Wright's longtime boyfriend, and no one said a word? No one mentioned that in passing? No one thought that might be inappropriate? And so since then, I've been screaming and yelling to get a 3rd audit done. Before we could get to the audit, we had to do an investigation first, and spend a lot of money hiring an investigator to find out, did Vincent Price have a conflict of interest when he investigated his boyfriend as part of an audit? And lo and behold, that one actually came back and they said, yes, Roy. They said, yes, believe it or not. I was shocked.
They weren't doing a Jesse Smollett. They were going to deny it all the way to the end. At least they admitted that part.
Yeah, they admitted that little part. But, of course, they also said, and the investigator didn't have to mention this, but he said, in Mr. Hunter's claims towards misappropriation of public funds, they look like there's some meat on those bones, more or less, right? I'm paraphrasing. And so that was done in 2019. And, of course, you've got an investigator saying possible misappropriation of public funds. We just got the draft audit back from an external auditor this time just the other day. So if you think back to when it's been about 2.5 years it took Riverside to get along to getting an audit done after an investigator said you have probable misappropriation of funds. We just got it back. So it comes back last week, right? I mean, the timing couldn't have been better or more coincidental or just karmic, I guess you'd say. It came out just as these stories were being released by the LA Times and the Department of Justice, these press releases. The Riverside SCAPA audit finally came back last week. And do you know what it said, lo and behold, Roy?
No,
it
I
said,
could hardly guess.
Mr. Hunter's allegations are completely unsupported once again. And I read the report, and it's lacking in so many different ways. But they basically are relying upon what I believe to be the conspirators, some of whom are still within the city of Riverside, who wrote staff reports justifying their actions. So the auditor is relying upon the opinions of the conspirators to say, basically, and that's the only evidence they have, to say, no policies were violated, no laws were broken, everything was just honky-dory here. We asked all the conspirators.
I mean,
in fact, I found out that they had asked Vince Price himself about, the activities in his prior audits. But, of course, they never contacted me, the original whistleblower. Never was contacted.
I mean, Khrushchev, Castro, Lenin, they got to be green with envy in their graves. Because this is stuff, they would be just absolutely jealous. You could get away with this, especially in the USA. It's supposed to be freedom and criminal justice system. I mean, at least those guys were honest about it. They said, "Yeah, we're crooks and tyrants. You're going to do, and we're going to do, and you're going to obey." Now we try and hide behind like this. This is absurd. This is absurd of the whole thing. Oh yeah, we're going to. You're accusing us of an audit. Yeah, I'll get my boyfriend over here to do the audit and then see how it all comes out. I mean, really.
And so now that the city, to their credit, the Government Affairs Committee over at the city of Riverside, looking at the evidence in totality, including the recent press releases by the Department of Justice, has said, you know what? We're not quite sure this audit has been done to our satisfaction. We're going to have to regroup, maybe put a pause on things for 30, 60, 90 days, and maybe redo or rethink about, amend the contract for the audit, and maybe dig a little deeper, and maybe, not use the conspirators' testimony as reasons for basically throwing Mr. Hunter's allegations out the window. So they did not just simply receive and file the reports and send them on to the council. They said, perhaps we need to do a little bit more work here. So, maybe the council, and my guess is they're probably urged along by the fact that people are going to go to jail now.
Yeah,
who are connected to Mr. Wright.
Yeah, when the principals are pleading, as we have up on the screen, ex-head of DWP agrees to plead guilty to a bribery charge. Let's maybe not maybe there is. Yes, it looks quite possibly, and it probably is. The extreme probability is there was ish going on down there, and all these dudes are trying to cover it up.
Yeah. I mean, the question is, did Mr. Wright learn how to be corrupt at LADWP, or was he corrupt when he was at Riverside for a decade?
It goes back to my point. If that would have been stopped, if they would have listened to the likes of Jason Hunter and all those throughout, the people that are trying to do what's right, to work, to actually do their jobs and actually work for the people and saying, you know what, this crop doesn't look like it's on the up and up over here. And instead of them being praised or say, thank you, let's do that, no, they're squashed, they're fired, they're ridiculed, they're made fun of, tried to strip their credibility all across the board because that's how they stay in power. And now they're getting away with it so long, nobody goes to jail. Like I said about the Smollett case and that other guy that was actor or whatever today that was convicted of child pornography. Give them the maximum sentences and have them sentenced consecutively. Hey, you know what? That will stop this stuff 98.7% of the time. If Dave Wright is in Leavenworth breaking rocks 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of his frickin' life, the rest of them in there pulling this crap are going to start paying attention, Jason.
Well, and I think it wasn't just Dave Wright, right? There's going to be more people, my guess, who are going to be either are going to be pleading here or will be arrested by the FBI and LADWP. And the question is, will they track it all the way back to organizations like SCAPA, and if there is wrongdoing there, and in the city of Riverside, will they start to investigate, like seriously, some of the claims that were made years ago when he was here? And they include, his boyfriend who wrote 2 audits and said nothing to see here, even though in my opinion there was clearly something to see there, because I believe it is a crime to fraudulently convey or make a fraud out of a government audit. So, how far are they going to go is the question. These investigators, I hope they take it to the nth degree. My guess is, there were some allusions in some of the FBI, the Department of Justice pleading papers that perhaps several of his family members, Mr. Wright's family members, were involved, at least indirectly, in some of the scheming that went on at LADWP. That's actually in the court papers. So I said, stay tuned, because this is going to be, it's got sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is going to be a really interesting web of deceit and treachery here. What's kind of transpired, and it's really, to me, it's indicative of what I saw when I was an employee over at RPU almost a decade ago. I always tell people I worked there for several years. I saw plenty of self-service and very little public service. And Dave was the ringleader of most of that, and he set the culture. And when he wasn't stopped at Riverside, and what he entered what I call the recycled executive trash program, where these guys, they sort of leave one area and they go on to bigger and better things at a larger jurisdiction. They just kind of repeat the pattern of the past, and so the question becomes, are they getting hired sometimes by elected officials because that's what they want? They want folks who are willing to bend, if not break the rules. So it's not like there weren't things on the internet that could have been researched about some of these characters that for some reason doesn't get done. It just they don't get fully vetted, and they end up getting hired, and they make more and more money and get more and more power, and they run the same more or less schemes. And so we shall see what comes up forward here, Roy, as far as what comes down the pipe in future Department of Justice pleadings or arrests by the FBI or even audits over at Riverside. But my guess is this story is far from over.
Just in Riverside, if you just stop this stuff on that, maybe you wouldn't have heard about the Russos, the Garishas, the Fosters, the DeSantises. This is a proliferation of what goes on this stuff on that. We got about a minute left. Anything else you need to get out or want a preview of what maybe events to come? And for those of you who think politics is boring, Jason said, look at it, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What else you need, Jason?
Yeah, well, I always say, that's why I always say these council meetings, the best entertainment and free entertainment in town on a Tuesday night are these city council meetings. There's all sorts of drama taking place. I mean, turn off the TV and go down to your local city council meeting, your local school board meeting, your local water district meeting, your local county board of supervisors meeting. and see what's going on, and do a little research, and invest yourself in some time into the whole concept of self-governance and actually participating in your governance. So the more eyeballs on this kind of stuff, and the more support for whistleblowers. And you mentioned that, and maybe I close with that, Roy, is that it is important. You have these whistleblowers out there, and when they come forward, the employees, with evidence, they need to be believed, and they need to be supported by the community, because it's very hard to do. Generally, those people are retaliated and harassed the entire time they're trying to come forward with the truth by the people in power. And those people in power try to ruin those people's lives in every way possible. And it was tried here in Riverside with me many years ago. It didn't work. But I can tell you that 95% of the time it does work. And so the community needs to support the insiders, the employees. Those are the first people to see the wrongdoing inside these government agencies, right? As the mid-level employees see them, well before the elected officials even do. And so, they almost have a handbook in California for going after the whistleblowers, and we need to put an end to that. We need to give more whistleblower protections in this state and federal across the country.
Stay tuned for the next Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll report from Jason Hunter on that. Thanks for being on, Jason. We'll do it again real soon.
You got it. Take care.
Jason Hunter, from former Riverside Public Utilities employee, as he said, fired by Dave Wright, who has now agreed to plead guilty in a bribery charge that he's went as he moved up the ladder to Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And as I've said, as Jason said, this is why it's important. This is what's happening at your city councils, your county supervisors, water board, school board. This is what's going on. This is what's going on behind the scenes. This is not an isolated case. I listed the names. Believe me, just Jason Hunter and I could probably go on till 3 o'clock in the morning outlining some of this stuff. You're seeing what's happening. The attempted political coup to take over the Moreno Valley City Council by any means, legally or illegally. And notice, after a week or so, 2 weeks of me putting that letter out, not one of them has denied it of that. Check out your colleague, council members, Richard Stewart, who was an attorney, and check out the definition of tacit agreement. Answer if you don't dispute or answer in my letter, then you are agreeing with it. We'll be back tomorrow. And maybe we'll talk about kittens and puppy dogs and all that stuff. Nice things going on of that. It just gets better every day, doesn't it? You never know. But mandatory, you're back here in 23 hours to hear the best darn show in the whole wide world. So until then, see ya!